some ladies said some bad words to you while you were at your dinner, boo-hoo, whoop-de-doo, bruh. Like, get over it.
So is it, again, sheer happenstance that individuals show up at a restaurant where the president is trying to enjoy dinner in Washington, D.C. and accost him with vile words and vile anger, and meanwhile he's simply trying to have dinner? Does it mean it's just completely random that they showed up? Maybe, but to the extent that it's part of an organized effort to inflict harm and terror and damage to the United States, there's potential investigations there.
All right, that was Deputy Attorney General and Trump's former personal attorney, Todd Blanche, telling CNN anchor Caitlin Collins that the women publicly protesting the president in Washington, D.C. could be looking at RICO charges. Yes, RICO charges, and those are typically used against large organized crime units in cases where no one individual commits an illegal act, but collectively they all engage in illegal behavior. For example, RICO is what finally brought down the mob. The group that is being discussed is called CODEPINK, and they went viral last week when they confronted the president along with others like JD Vance and Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. And by confronted, I just mean that they were yelling things at him. Look at this.
Trump is the Hitler of our time. Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time. Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time. He's terrorizing communities in DC.
Go, time to go.
He's terrorizing communities all over the world. Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time.
All right, so Trump, unwilling to accept any kind of criticism, is now weaponizing his DOJ, not the DOJ, but his DOJ against these activists for daring to speak out against him. And before we go on, let's hear more from the exchange between Collins and Blanche.
But were those women in the restaurant inflicting harm or terror or damage by protesting the president of the United States? I mean, they were just shouting basically in his vicinity.
I mean, repeat what you just said. I mean, honestly, so you're asking whether there's damage done by 4 individuals screaming and yelling at the president of our United States while he's trying to have dinner. That can't be a serious question. That cannot be a serious question. I mean, it's true that there's a difference between shouting and committing an assassination,
there were supporters outside
which is what happened to Charlie.
Well, it is nice that Todd Blanche can concede that yelling in a restaurant is not quite the same thing as assassinating someone, but Blanche did continue arguing that the right needs to get ahead of the dangerous, loud left.
Well, it depends. There's nothing wrong with peaceful protests, and nobody has ever said so. Of all the people in this country, President Trump knows exactly what it's like to have people protest against him. But what he's talking about and what the administration is talking about is organized efforts by individuals who are not present at the protests, but they're funding these protests, and they're not protests. They're inflicting damage and harm and actually assaulting officers. They're damaging vehicles, and that's the conduct that we're trying to stop.
I just love Caitlin Collins' face as she's listening to all of this. So CODEPINK released a statement regarding their efforts, calling out the president for attempting to intimidate those who are speaking out against him and his administration. They said there is not some sort of big conspiracy around disruptions and confrontations like at Joe's. We practice nonviolent and non-threatening free speech. It is as simple as that. Anyone who believes in free speech should be appalled at this attempt to criminalize it. And this is all part of Republican efforts to actually suppress free speech in Charlie Kirk's name, especially on Monday. Trump said that he was considering naming Antifa a terrorist organization, even though Antifa is hardly an organization at all. And he suggested that he would revoke tax exempt status for liberal nonprofit groups and possibly explore criminal charges against groups or individuals that they deem to be targeting conservatives, whatever that even means, right? We just watched a whole exchange between Caitlin Collins and Todd Blanche, where Todd Blanche was like incredulous that Caitlin Collins was saying all they were doing was yelling at him, right? And he was trying to say this is violent behavior, or like at least it leads to that. And he said, yeah, there's a difference between yelling at someone and assassinating someone. It's like, obviously, but why are we even having this conversation in the first place? I was laughing through that exchange because it was so ridiculous, but the reality is that these are things that they're actually implementing and following through on, and that is a very dangerous place for us to be in as a country. What are your thoughts, Wes?
Again, this is just par for the course in terms of the crackdown these people are trying to enact on those who they deem as their opposition. Everything that he said is patently ridiculous. This speech is protected under the Constitution. And more to the point, we live in some of the most undemocratic times of our existence. And what do I mean by that? To pretend that the will of the people is being expressed by the Trump regime and organization, I think is a joke. So we don't even get democracy in terms of the people's will being exercised by the folks that they duly elected. The idea that we can't even have, we disrupt your freaking little dinner. Okay, like you get to be the leader of the United States of America. Some ladies said some bad words to you while you were at your dinner. Boo-hoo, whoop-de-doo, bruh. Like, get over it. The idea that this guy has been wounded by this. Like, he's not a nobody. He's not a private citizen. He's the freaking president. Like, by definition, he works for those women that were screaming at him at that restaurant. It's just crazy that this chump lawyer would get up there and talk the way that he did.
Yeah, and people like Donald Trump, they don't think of their actual constituents as anybody that they are beholden to or that they owe anything to. He's just very annoyed, and he's like, you know what? I have a whole DOJ that I'm basically controlling, a whole other branch of government that I'm able to wield, in whichever litigious direction I want to. So he's doing that, and why wouldn't he? And what he's trying to do is he's trying to suppress opposition, he's trying to suppress voices, he's trying to impinge on our freedom of speech in a real way, not just in the way that the right always tries to say that the left is doing. And he's trying to just come for all of our First Amendment. And that's what's happening. We're seeing what's happening in media. We're seeing what's happening with just regular people who are just saying things loudly in restaurants. None of this is normal. And we can never pretend that it is. We can never let ourselves get to that point, all right?
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.